Welcome to North Idaho Experience Podcast for the people of North Idaho and those who are North Idaho curious. Hey, we are back today with our second episode of the Judicial Watch Group for Kootenai County. Eric is going to drop some information on you guys today that's probably going to fire you up again. But it's good to stay informed. That's how this community stays the amazing community that it actually is. So please listen and take this information as you will. Let it affect your voting. Spread this information around so that when it comes time to pick our judges, the voter base can make a good, informed decision that matches the values of this community. Enjoy. Hey, welcome back. Judicial Watch Group is back in effect. This is the second episode. We have some new information today, and we had some incredible feedback from the first time that we did it. So thank you all for that. We'll have some more information on how you guys can help throughout this podcast. So here we are. My name is Seth, Horst. Eric Boardman is with me. Eric worked in local law enforcement for a long time here, so he has a lot of knowledge about our local judicial system. I was in law enforcement somewhere else, so I have some knowledge. And we have a lot of ties to the community here, so we are really leaning on them to get information to us at this point so that we can relay it to you guys, because an informed population is the best thing possible.
Yeah, the amount of feedback we got on this it was overwhelming and humbling, but it's highly encouraging because we've talked about, this is a passion project of ours because we want people to be informed when they go vote. And we aren't going to try to tell them which way to vote. I know that inevitably our opinions come out a little bit,
sure,
the way that we feel about certain things. But man, an informed population is a involved population. So I love that people are that interested. It's hard for us, and just speaking frankly, to stand up a full-blown judicial watch group. We quite frankly don't have the bandwidth. I don't know how we're keeping up with what we're doing currently, but that doesn't mean we don't have an interest and that we don't want to be a voice. There are some really cool backgrounds out here and people that have done things like this. Mm-hmm. And you and I have talked at length, what that looks like, whether we, try to set up a group and, have a collective, think tank on we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's other places that have done this and done it really, really well. And there's people willing to volunteer and all of that. One of the big ones is people wanted to know how they could anonymously provide information. And we've got a workaround for that I think that we'll get to. The big ones, man, are, I don't just want to read off what happens at sentencing. I think that's important, but those are matters of public record. The rest of them aren't until that case is completely adjudicated, and what happens in preliminary hearings and motions to suppress. And some of these other hearings are equally important. And what judges are suppressing before a jury trial, because we've discussed how there's no standardization. I think those are the things you can catch with a functioning and involved judicial watch, where people they can sit in courtrooms and do some of that. Yeah,
and if you didn't watch our first episode, this really stems from when you go to vote in a local election and there's judges on there. There's no information about those judges. It's very hard to find any information about them anywhere. Yeah. So a lot of people tend to vote in the incumbents or don't vote or just randomly pick a name. And they are having judges that whose values align with the values of the community is extremely important in my opinion, because we are a very conservative community here in North Idaho, and there are shockingly some judges that are not. And they are giving very light sentences on things that would frankly piss all of you off.
Yeah, dude, we've talked to a lot of local politicians here recently, too, that are running for office, and there seems to be a certain type that's attracted to those type of positions. Mm-hmm. I don't think judges are immune from that. There's a lot of politicians that were judges first. Mm-hmm. And I think, I feel the same way about, I had this thought on the way here, term limits. I think there should be term limits for judges, too.
Sure.
Because even though you gather some of that experience, I think you get detached from what's actually going on at the ground level, unless you're truly committed to constant learning, constant reevaluation. I think judges going on ride-along should be a real thing.
It should be a real thing, because they're subject to becoming complacent, just like anyone else in any other field, right?
Right.
You've worked with the cop that's been there for 30 years, and you're like, damn, dude, you got like 1 year on the job. You haven't adapted or grown at all in that time. And
Yes.
they're subject to that as well. So,
Right.
so our goal is to provide some accountability to make sure people are thinking and doing the best that they can in their field, including judges, of course.
And there's just been a lack of that here lately. You know, a lot of other places, they've got a magistrate judge that kind of oversees and sets the standard, if you will. Hey, here's the way that we're going to interpret it. It's not like that here. It's almost an administrative judge position where it's more like just making sure administrative everything else is done. Other than that, the prevailing theme that I'm getting, especially after our first judicial watch, is it is the Wild West. I mean, you can take two cases that are identical by far as far as elements and interaction and interviewing. Man, they're adjudicated completely different. And where I get frustrated is they go through that entire process. In Idaho, you go to court. If you're a lateral, I'll help prep you. Like, you go to court in Idaho. There's a preliminary hearing. Often there's a motion to suppress. Then there's a jury trial. So you get proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And oftentimes that's after a plea or after charges are changed. You get that proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and then it goes before a judge for sentencing. Total wild card, man.
Because there are some great judges here as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Awesome. I mean,
it's not all bad.
No, and this one I'll call out by name. What's crazy is when you think about the background of some, some that seem to be a little bit more progressive. It's, shocking to find out that maybe they were on the prosecution side for the majority of your career. And then one of our biggest, one of my favorite judges, and that doesn't mean she was pro-cop, but that just means that she would, very analytical, seemed to have standards. It was very consistent, and then sometimes would just be a hammer on the stand, was a career public defender.
That's interesting.
Man, but she got tired of it. Like, she witnessed that got so sick of the excuses and everything else, and probably started off a certain way thinking, oh, these are just people making a mistake, but got so sick and tired of the excuses over and over. And man, on the stand, she does not play games.
Because they deal with the same crap that the street cop deals with, the excuses, right?
Yeah.
Everybody you pull over, every tweaker, they've all got.
Oh, I promise, I swear.
Yeah,
my favorite was, on my mother's life.
Oh,
I can't tell you the number of times
now I know you're lying.
Now I know that this is going to be something really, really good. I did want to dive into it a little bit. It's tough up here right now, and I told some close friends that I'd talk about that. Sometimes when you're reading those sentencing, the prosecutor's office catches a whole ton of hell. They catch a lot because they're like, why was that pled down? They never should have pled that down. This is on the prosecutors. This is a poor prosecution, whatever it is. They feel a lot of the same effects that other places do. Like right now, you can get paid more as a prosecutor in Shoshone than you can in Kootenai County.
What?
Yeah.
No offense to Shoshone County, but they're hurting for money over there. So that's very surprising to me.
Same in Bonner.
Okay.
You can get paid more, and your caseload's a hell of a lot less. So they're actually losing prosecutors to Bonner County. That's not an excuse to not appropriately prosecute a case, but you can understand when your caseload is a lot bigger.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit harder to do that.
Right.
Other ones, when they're looking at a case and they see who the presiding judge is and they've dealt with this in the past, they can see where sometimes it's better to get a plea deal and something on paper.
Oh, like it actually might be stricter punishment to go that route.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, as opposed to gamble with something else. But, it's tough. I mean, they, by and large, do a really, really good job here. Our community is still one of the safest in the country.
And that's a reflection on the street level people all the way up through the judicial system, of course.
And our intention of this podcast is not just a bitch. I firmly believe that preventative maintenance is better than corrective maintenance.
Yep.
By the time you get to corrective, something is already damaged, and it's likely damaged other things. And I think that we have good examples of that all over the country. So that's why I like to get out in front of this. I do want to clarify something from before, because it was brought up that we erred a little bit when we talk about the Magistrate Commission and their selection of judges. Mm-hmm. A lot of that goes out. There are survey results that come in where they make their selection of some of the to-be magistrate judges. Those are the ones that come in for 18 months before they go on their 4-year terms. And they're sent out to lawyers, mayors, judges, these survey results. What's weird is there's no prosecutors and no police departments. They don't assess it based on that. And based largely on those survey results, that's how they select the next judges that are coming in. Okay. So I would ask you, if you've been a really effective trial lawyer as a prosecutor, do you think you've done that without pissing off some people along the way? So maybe some of those that were very adamant at holding people accountable and probably argued vociferously certain directions, probably alienated themselves in the process.
Okay.
Now, I know we brought it up a little bit last time, but there is a current prosecutor that absolutely should have been a judge. 100% has more trial experience than all the judges combined that were recently brought in as a new one. But he pissed off the wrong people. Mm-hmm. So I have my beef with that process, with the selection process. Let's see, man. Where do we want to kick this thing off?
Eric has tons of notes, by the way. Which
is I always do that.
Very thorough. I have one name written on a piece of paper.
No, that's good. All right, dude. I'm just gonna
and doodling. Yeah,
I'm gonna hit you with it.
Hey,
all right. So
Eric has promised to, and he has not shared any of this with me intentionally because my reactions will be genuine. Some of the stuff's gonna piss you guys off. So, and that's okay. That's how we get the ball rolling, is to elicit an emotional response. That here we go.
Yes,
hit me, dude.
So. This is a Idaho Supreme Court case law.
Okay.
It's Farrell Quiggle for anybody that wants to look that up. The long and short of it is he was charged with 2 counts of lewd conduct with a minor. I believe it was under the age of 15. Don't hold me to those details. But he went through the entire prosecution process and was found guilty, went to jury trial. In this instance, the child victims of...
Plural.
Yes.
Okay.
They, while testifying, there is a Supreme Court case law that you need to face your accuser. That's where Idaho gets weird. You need to face your accuser in this instance.
Physically, just like this.
Yes. So in this instance, they had requested with the judge at the time, the child was so scared of being in the same room, they put up a barrier so the child would not have to see the perpetrator of these acts that probably will alter the course of the rest of their life.
Yep.
Ultimately, this case was overturned and dismissed because in the state of Idaho, they did not feel as though he appropriately was able to face his accuser, even though the child was in the same room.
Get the hell out of here, dude.
Yeah. So
how can you ask a child? Most adults couldn't do that. An adult would have a hard time facing someone that did.
And we
whatever.
ask, that's not, it doesn't stop.
That's
there.
how they got off.
Yes.
That's completely insane.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that you would ask, and there are people a hell of a lot smarter than we are that, counselors out there that deal with children. You can imagine what it would take to get them to do that, but even more so, what would it take to get a parent to have them stand and sit in front of to speak? It would be gut-wrenching and painful. There was supposed to be some accommodations for where the witness could testify on a live screen from another room. Those have been tossed locally. No, won't allow that, even though that should be part of the case law. Some judges here won't allow that, won't allow them to testify even from a separate room live, so they wouldn't have to face them. So when it comes to...
you already pissed me off.
I know. I told you I was going to.
Wow.
But a lot of it when you're talking about the child cases, unbelievably hard to prosecute, wildly difficult to prosecute. So try to give a little bit of grace when you're reading some of those because you don't know all the circumstances. All you're seeing is the sentencing or the plea agreements or something like that, because those can be really, really difficult.
To have someone get off on that, I want to believe there's justice in the world, right?
Right.
Like I function on that, and that's not justice.
No, and it's not even protecting the innocent. I mean, it's not just the lack of accountability for the person that perpetrated those crimes, but it's actually protecting the innocent victims. And I think all of us could agree that children, by and large, truly are innocent.
Does the judge in this case have a track record of similar things?
Mm-hmm.
Can we say the name?
I'm not going to on that one because I don't have the details of the case in which that individual would not allow them to testify. And one thing I'm not going to be on here. I'm going to be as accurate as I possibly can.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
No,
if we get that information in the future and it's verified, then we will release it.
Yep, and we'll get to some names here when we're reading off sentencing and stuff like that. But there are some other ones that bug me when you talk about when we broke down. You kind of get removed a little bit, and you get a little apathetic when you've been there for too long. Judges are supposed to, let's go with child abuse or child. They are, it is my understanding, they are required to view the evidence prior to sentencing. There's a judge here that refuses to do that if it's a child case before sentencing. It's a requirement, probably for a lot of reasons. Mm-hmm. So you can understand the context of what it is you're about to sentence when you're going to see somebody's freedoms. There's a judge here that more than once refuses to look at sentencing.
Nobody wants to look at, some people do, but how I feel about those people, but I
You're
get
a judge.
it, right?
When you're a cop, dude.
Cops have to do it.
I've had
That's
to
what you
look
sign
at
up for.
awful.
Yeah.
That's part of the job.
And you don't
right?
get it out of your head ever. And but
Right.
you're right. That's what you signed up for.
So that is Judge Pittman. He
Okay.
won't review any of those, or he won't review.
Name comes up a lot, doesn't it?
It does. It's not the last time it's going to come up either. So when we go and we break down, some of those cases, I think you can begin to understand and grasp a little bit more why sometimes the sentencing doesn't match the crime and why it pisses people off. I mean, I don't think there's anybody out there that can't get behind, protecting children from child molesters. And
It's the most heinous of crimes, in my opinion.
right.
Because they're the most innocent class that we have. They are the embodiment of innocence in our society, and to have people prey on them,
Right.
there's nothing lower.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I hate even bringing it up, but to me, it's very similar to, shooter going into an elementary school.
Yeah.
There's absolutely zero threat of encountering any opposition at all. Extremely easy to manipulate. I mean, it just hits me in the gut. It's also, I felt the way about elder abuse in a lot of ways too, because it's like you're completely taking advantage of somebody that physically can't do anything back and easy to manipulate.
This is handled, by the way, we are never advocating for violence. What we are advocating for is to the public to be informed, so that when you guys go out to vote, you can make those decisions for yourself, and you can write letters. You can make a stink. You can voice your opinions. Is there a way to do that if people want to write letters of, to get them? Where would they send them?
Oh, I'd send it to your state representative.
State reps, okay.
Yeah, I'd send it to, Jordan Redmond is a state rep. I think
Jordan's a good dude.
Yeah.
So, these people are easy to get a hold of, to keep pushing these issues so that, we can get judges like that out of here.
Right. And can you imagine the conversation that's had with that child's parents before they go testify against their perpetrator? And they're saying, hey, this is a really big ask. It's going to kill me to watch my child go through this. Can we at least get a board up so they don't have to stare directly at them? That seems very freaking reasonable to me.
It does.
And it seemed reasonable to the judge at the time. And then it goes to the Idaho Supreme Court, who's an entire, the southern part of the state away, to look at it and say, no, you actually didn't get to face your accuser, even though it was a vulnerable child. That's pathetic. Honestly, the decision making, I don't know why you originally got into this in the first place, but I'm sure it wasn't for something like that, to further remove any protections from an innocent child. I guess I would ask you to go back and challenge yourself, look back in the mirror and try to remember who you were when you first got into that seat, and think to yourself, why did I get into this? Mm-hmm. Because ultimately that's up to interpretation. And those are the things that really suck, because that's making bad case law. Mm-hmm. I know I talked about it before, you can't arrest on a misdemeanor didn't occur, the Clark decision. And a lot of people are like, holy crap, you can't. Yeah, no, you really, really can't do that. There's some terrible case laws that have come out, and that being one of them, because I think it just erodes juvenile victim protection.
Absolutely.
So I want to get into a little bit, and this one is going to involve a sentencing, but I think it paints a really good picture of the current system and process, and kind of gives you an idea how they all work, because it's not just about the final sentencing. This was a male from Rathdrum. He was convicted of PWI fentanyl, possession with intent to deliver, trafficking of methamphetamine, which is in excess of 28 grams, which comes with a 3-year minimum mandatory sentence, possession of fentanyl, and 6 counts of exploitation of a child. I'm going to get into that in a second. The first arrest occurred, it sounds like it was probation, so he had trafficking amounts of meth. He had 83 fentanyl pills, so PWI fentanyl, and you've heard me rally about fentanyl. And this was 2023, so this is back when they were real potent. But anyhow, and then he had fentanyl possession. He initially went to court, and Pittman actually imposed a $150,000 bond, which is pretty high for a drugs case. I was a little surprised by that. However, 9 days later, he went before a different judge, because they judge shop, and had that dropped to $40,000 and then posted bond. So Judge Van Valen dropped his bond from $150,000 to $40,000, and then he was able to post bond, because usually it's 5 to 10%, so $4,000, $2,000.
Why would a judge do that? Is there an argument for some type of hardship on this person?
Yes, and maybe, lack of funds, lack of job. He just felt like, it was too much, or he was trying to be reasonable. I don't know. I mean, because this was definitely in opposition to the prosecutor's recommendations. Mm-hmm. And some of them look at it and they're like, well, they probably believe that some people out there do that drugs are victimless. That just means
that gets you fired up.
Oh yeah, it gets me. Dude, yeah. Well, I just wish I could take some of these and just play this. Mm-hmm. Go watch some body cam. Mm-hmm. Go watch some body cam of Officer with PD who's been on this podcast before walk into a room where a 3-year-old slept with her dead mother, right, for 24 hours after a fentanyl overdose. Tell me that's victimless. Mm-hmm. Tell me. Explain that to me. Anyways, I go back. So after getting the bond reduced and him getting released, he bonded out. This will shock you, cops had contact with him less than 2 months later.
Of course.
He was in a motel room, and he was giving them a hard time because they wanted to search the motel room and looking for another wanted subject.
Must have been a Super 8, I'm just saying.
Could have been. Sometimes Budget Saver's no good either, dude. There's a few of them out there. Motel 6? I mean, come on now. I don't feel bad saying it. So during that, they found more fentanyl pills in his pocket.
Shocker.
So he gets taken to jail again, so now he's got a separate fentanyl charge. He gets taken in, and Judge Walsh imposes a $150,000 bond. That one stuck, and then he was in custody through sentencing. Weird how that works.
Yeah.
So let's go over criminal history real quick. All right. 5 decades. Grand larceny, malicious injury to property, resisted, obstructing, disturbing the peace, assault, battery, possession of controlled substance with intent to deliver, disorderly conduct, theft by possessing stolen property, burglary, felon in possession of a weapon, telephone harassment, petty theft, domestic battery, traumatic injury, possession of controlled substances, intentional destruction of a telecommunication device, inattentive, careless driving, you'll like that one, and countless probation violations.
So, obviously the judges have the ability to see this and should see this.
Especially when you're talking about
So this is not
bond.
some guy who made a mistake one time.
Correct.
Okay. This is a career.
Yeah. He's made a career of it. So he goes to court for those drug-related charges. It's fentanyl delivery. That's punishable up to life in prison. Trafficking in meth. That's punishable up to life in prison, but there's a 3-year mandatory minimum sentence. I like mandatory minimums because it removes some of the discretion. Possession of fentanyl is a felony in prison, up to 7 years. He was sentenced on November 22nd, 2024, by Judge Simmons. Prosecutor recommended unified sentence of life with parole eligibility after 10 years. And, that was just for, possession with intent to deliver fentanyl. Yeah, and there was actually asked for more. The judge ultimately granted a unified 15-year prison sentence with parole eligibility after 5. So it was recommended that he get 10 and parole eligibility after 10 with life. And in this instance, it was 15-year with 5. Back to the hotel room. Not done yet.
Oh, there's more.
Yes. They obtained a search warrant for his phone. Hundreds of suspected images of I apologize for this, but I want to read it because I want it to resonate. Including an image depicting a female toddler with a pacifier in her mouth being by an adult male.
What the fuck?
So, it's a felony, punishable up to 10 years in prison. He was sentenced on August 15th, 2025 by the same judge, Judge Simmons. They recommended 10 years in prison with no possibility of parole. He got 10-year prison sentence with parole eligibility after 5. So his total prison sentence is less than what was initially recommended just for the drugs.
So it actually went down once they added on the child charges.
Yes. I mean, they didn't run concurrent, I don't think. I don't have an answer to that. But the reason I went through that much time explaining what that was is because you can start to see what the whole process looks like. Right? It's not just about the sentencing. It's about the bond. And then it's about what actually gets suppressed in jury trial, which we can get into that too. Because every judge, we had a case here locally where it was somebody in a position of trust caring for kids at a local high school where he groomed high school girls for an extended period of time and then would wait until they were 18 in most cases. They ultimately decided that the testimony of some of the other students that were there while he was there would be prejudicial. and they were not allowed to testify in the jury trial or in the case. Those are tough.
Yeah.
Those are tough because you're talking about the admittance of evidence potentially in a jury trial case. But that was Judge Jensen.
How many judges are over there? Because you've given me like
oh, gosh, we went over this. What did we say? 9?
Okay.
But it's hard because, like I know I mentioned Judge Christensen in the last one. He has since retired, but he can still bump in. And he's not elected anymore, but he can bump in because he's retired. And this Judge Jensen came down from Bonner County to rep some of these cases. So it's weird.
That is weird.
Yeah, but I will say, I know that, it wasn't Simmons. I don't remember who's up for re-election next year, but Pittman's one of them.
Okay.
He's up for re-election in May.
And Pittman needs to go.
Man, I'm not going to be the one to say that. I'll leave that up to the voters.
Leave it up to you guys.
Yes, leave that up to them. But it's not the last time that his name will come up when we talk about some of the other stuff. This will excite you. How about a?
My heart rate's
This
up,
is your world, bro. This is your world.
I'm feeling hot, like I'm enraged.
Here we go. You're gonna love it. Guy was found guilty of DUI excessive.
Okay,
there we go.
all right,
Trooper's gonna troop, dude.
Excessive
and he had,
up here, would that mean blood alcohol content extra high? Is that what that?
0.222.
That's pretty damn high.
0.242. 0.232.
The legal limit's 0.08.
Yes, so he's triple.
And if you've ever tested yourself around an 08, like you're pretty tipsy. If I were an 08, I'd be like, there's no way I'm driving. So he's 3 times that almost.
But I do think it's important to bring up DUIs because they're super common and they get interpreted very, very differently.
Also,
but
definitely not a victimless crime, right? I've seen a lot of dead bodies on the freeway due to alcohol. So
right, and that's why I think there should be some standardization. So
yes.
this will drive you a little bit crazy. He was ultimately sentenced. This was recent. So this was August of 2025. His criminal history spans 3 decades, convictions for distribution of controlled substance, bail jumping, possession of drug paraphernalia, domestic assault battery, violation of protection order, aggravated assault battery, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. He also has 7 prior DUI convictions.
7. So, wow.
The recommendation for this DUI was a unified 3.5-year jail sentence with release onto probation after 2 years of actual jail time. He had done, after his arrest, he'd done 78 days in jail until he was released to a program, basically a rehab program. This was Judge Boardman, sentenced him to a unified 2-year jail sentence, suspended the sentence, and placed Real on supervised probation for 2 years.
So out of all that, he gets 2 years.
Probation. 2 years of probation.
There's about 100% chance he will reoffend.
Oh, yeah.
And let's hope it's not the time that he kills a family on the road.
Oh, yeah. Hang on, I'm just writing some stuff down. I'm going to talk about suspended sentences and riders here in a second.
That's incredibly frustrating to me.
I understand the frustration.
Having family members, kids included, that drive now, and I'm looking at the possibility of this guy back out on the road.
Yeah,
which I'm sure he is.
Yeah, very likely. And like I said, he's on probation now. But it's tough looking at when you look at history, because I think the best indication of what you're going to do is what you've done. It's not to say people can't change, but there's got to be some skin in the game. And when you're looking at 7 different times, that one's tough. And I go back to this, and I'm not lobbying for this, but everybody wants to talk about removing the immunity for cops. Mm-hmm. Where are judges in this? Mm-hmm. Let's say if that individual or somebody similar to him or somebody that's committed a heinous violent crimes historically, or let's say that guy that got busted for fentanyl and then his bond was reduced and he got out and then he sold fentanyl to a 17-year-old kid and they died. Where's the discussion about immunity for judges, right? Without some sort of justification on
Do they sleep well at night when this stuff happens? I don't know.
Man, it's such I think they've got a unique way of viewing, different things without applying the same logic or It's weird. I don't want to say it's just a lawyer thing, but I've seen it more in that profession. Yeah, where you can apply completely different logic to different things. I don't know. That one's tough for me. But like I said, it's an interesting topic because a lot of people have talked about removing officers' immunity when we're requiring them to go to these scenarios that require a rapid, quick, deliberate decision that may or may not go perfectly. But There's never been any discussion about doing that.
Right. Judges who have all the time in the world have all of the information.
Yes. You remove the exigence, then you can look back. But I mean, part of me gets that, but I don't know. Then you kind of look at the, the altruistic side, and sometimes I guess you see it through rose-colored glasses where you think somebody can change. But my experience is they have to have some skin in the game.
I want to believe that too. I've had many conversations on the side of the road with somebody who I feel like they want to change too.
Yes.
But the reality of them actually changing when there's that much of a history is pretty slim. Right.
I wanted to go over a little bit about riders because you see those a lot in the sentencing, and we saw them a ton with the county. In this one, I'll just rattle it off. This was a child under the age of 16, and it actually occurred with two of them when they were 11 and 13. It's punishable up to 25 years in prison. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of this one, but they were sentenced. Ultimately, what was recommended was a 13-year prison sentence with parole eligibility after 3 years. Even in the plea, this individual said they would stipulate to that recommended imposed sentence. She was ultimately sentenced to a 10-year prison sentence with parole eligibility after 3, but the judge retained jurisdiction. What that means is they're going to put them on to a rider, which allows the defendant to spend up to 1 year in a prison-based treatment program before returning to court, where the judge will decide to either release the defendant on a probation or leave them in prison for the remainder of their sentence. So it's a treatment program for a year. And I don't even think it's that long. We have people in our system that have been on 7 riders. So the recommendation was 3 years. The defendant in this case said, yeah, I'll stipulate to that. Judge says, no, I'm going to retain jurisdiction and send you on a rider. So they go down there for a year and then come back and go on probation. That happens all the time. I could name one. I know.
What's the purpose of that? Is it
on its face? I like the treatment idea.
Absolutely.
I want to see people get better.
Sure.
I don't know. And it really complicates a lot of things. I had a really good run-in when we were at the concert the other day with somebody who will remain nameless, but had a lot of knowledge about jails, had a lot of knowledge about the jail staffing and the beds and everything else, because what comes up a lot is, hey, we don't have enough beds, right? And a lot of the beds that get used in Kootenai County aren't from Kootenai County. They're from down south because they run out of space, so they kind of swap and share. And there was some argument about, hey, we don't want to take any more of yours, of anybody from down south. We don't have the beds. We need to keep them for Kootenai County. And Boise's like, yeah, okay, cool. Then you take all your riders back. And when they looked at the numbers, the number of riders that Kootenai County sends down is astronomical. I am not going to put any to it because I don't have them in front of me, but it well exceeded by exponential values how many other counties were putting on to riders. Oh. So it's almost like, I don't know why it's a theme here, but it's not changing. All it is like pushing the problem out and making it harder for the back end.
I'm just trying to think outside the box here. Why would they be doing that? Is there a monetary?
I don't know, man.
You know what I mean? Do they get paid for that somehow? Or are we just freeing up space here by getting these people down there where otherwise they'd just be here for 3 years?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's the thought, but that's a very short-sighted thought.
That's a very short-sighted thought.
So I don't know, because Kootenai County is, they're going to send them down if it's a felony, they're going to go down south anyways. They're going to go to prison. Mm-hmm. People aren't going to spend the entire 3 years in Kootenai County jail. It doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. But they'll be here until sentencing. So I don't know what the thought process is. Maybe somebody out there can tell us. But that's eye-opening to me, and I want people to be aware of that is where some of the complication comes into play. And I just truly wish there used to be conversations where you could get cops and judges and attorneys where, again, it's a lot harder to disagree when you're face to face, or at least open up a line of communication. And I've never been a part of that since I've been a cop. It used to be where you could say, hey, guys, here's our application to this. What do you think about this case law? We're training cops. So instead of us learning by you allowing a piece of shit felon who's going to continue to victimize the rest of the community, instead of us learning by you throwing out a case, how about you tell us what your interpretation is? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, tell us how to teach. so that it's in line. The issue is every judge is going to tell you something different. I don't want to say every, that was generality, but there will be little contingents, right? Do they apply the case law this way? Just like the State versus Dorf case, where they decided that a canine touching his nose to a car was a search. It was a Fourth Amendment violation. Nowhere else like that in the country.
That one's dumb. I'm not a canine guy, but I
Right.
know that a dog has a really good sense of smell. And whether their nose is touching or 5 feet away, it's probably the same thing, right?
Right. Well, to me, it's about their change in behaviors, the alert. I was not a canine handler either, but it's about their change in behaviors, the alert. So isn't the dog walking, and this is where I'd love to have this conversation and bring in there would be some really good canine handlers out there that would eat this up.
Oh, yeah.
But if they're walking along the side of a car and they change their behavior to turn towards the car and steer their head, isn't that beginning of the alert?
Yeah.
The alert doesn't occur when they stare afterwards, right? They're changing their behavior. That is the process of the alert. But you can't explain that. There's no venue to get in front of judges where you can say, hey, let's discuss this. And if you don't believe me, come on out and watch. We'd love to show you our trainings.
We need to get a canine handler on here to talk about that stuff.
Yes.
I have seen a canine doing a search and then stick their nose right in a milkshake.
Yeah. Yes. And look, man, if I'm going to play devil's advocate here, bro, like if a window's down and a dog jumps up with paws and has their entire head in the car, if I am the vehicle owner, I consider that to be a bit of an intrusion on my privacy, or jumps up on my paint.
Yep.
I would consider that as the property owner, like, man, really? You said you were going to walk around the outside of my car. Now I have scratches down there. I could make a bit of an argument for that, right? But if it's in the process of an alert to an illicit drug,
Yeah.
right? And especially when that alert is confirmed, then come on now. It's establishment of probable cause, which needs to be 51%. So it's crazy. When you get some of those rulings, it changes the way that we police. Those need to be addressed. And I don't know what the answer is for some of the stuff that's coming out of Boise. I don't know what the answer is.
I do. And I've talked about this before, and it's probably not a popular opinion, but I fully believe that we're going to have AI judges at some point, because it's almost like they shouldn't be this much interpretation, right? They should understand case law. They should understand the law, and it should be pretty black and white.
Right.
It's not.
No. And everybody gets their interpretation, but that's where it'd be nice if you had some overseeing. It's almost like having a Sarge on patrol.
Yes.
Sarge is like, all right, guys, here's what's up. This is the way that we're going to apply this from here forward. This is best practices. This is what's come down from the courts. This is how we're going to do it. Protect people's rights, which is what we do, right? And at the same time, go out and be proactive and protect our community. There's no judge that does that. Judges need a sergeant.
They do.
That's what I've decided with this whole thing. I did want to bring up one more part that I missed with this. The individual that got the rider came back after the rider. Let's see, violated probation. Less than, let's see. And it was, she returned to court for review hearing, recommended that she remain in prison for the remainder of her sentence. And Judge Pittman suspended the sentence and released her right back onto 4 years of probation.
Slap on the hand.
Yes. That's my biggest issue, man. When you've got like a long history of either violating the terms of your probation or getting right back into the same habit, that's where the one kills me. Because, I was a dope cop. I firmly believe that meth and fentanyl that is the factor behind a whole bunch of our crime, especially our disgusting crime.
Yep.
When you get into that stuff, child porn and meth are hand in hand.
Every time.
In horrible assaults and stuff like that, meth is a motivating factor. I will argue with anybody about that because I've had to look at the cell phones. So when you let that individual back out, and then it's compounded by that, because that's moving right down the line. So how far is that individual away from that video to enacting it? You have the opportunity. It seems that we seem to be really light on drug sentences, even though they're career drug users. Do you have to wait for that individual to do something heinous? Last two officers that were shot here were motivated by illicit drugs. There's a clear nexus of violent crime and illicit drug use, and I'll debate anybody on that. Clear nexus of violent crime. I'm not talking about freaking smoking weed in your garage, eating Funyuns, working on your truck, dude. That's not what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm talking about, I'm not saying marijuana is good either or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm going to get some hate for that. But illicit drug use, meth and fentanyl is a totally different animal. Go to downtown Spokane. See.
There you go. Case study.
Ask me if those people look happy. Go ask them if they're happy. Go watch Seattle is Dying. It was a documentary ahead of its time 10 years ago in Seattle by a Como News reporter that absolutely read the tea leaves on what was going to happen in Seattle. A fascinating documentary about what can happen if you allow pervasive illicit drug use in your city. And again, it's hard to catch. It's hard to, when you get these child crimes and you see how difficult it is to get a prosecution on these when you're asking a 11-year-old to testify in front of their abuser. You see how hard these cases are. Why not nip it with illicit drug possession prior to that? Clear nexus there. You'd be amazed at how many RSOs are meth users. I'm not saying all, but you'd be amazed at how many of them are. So that one bugs me. Every time I see a super light drug sentence, it's like, what are we doing? That's the preventative maintenance part.
Yeah.
That's the part we can catch them doing before they go victimize somebody. Should they have to victimize somebody first? That should be the difference in our community here. So, anyways, there you go. There's my soapbox, bro.
Gosh.
Told you I'd get you a little pissed off. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry.
I'm going to spend all weekend trying to decompress. I'm writing some notes here.
Look, North Idaho is still... Idaho's ranked 49th out of 50 in violent crime rate. I am just wildly passionate about keeping it that way.
Yeah, and this is how it starts.
We got to have real conversations.
Yes, and people need to be informed. Like, you guys out there need to hear this stuff. A lot of you come from this world, so it's not a surprise to you, but some of you don't, and it may be a surprise to you, right? We live in a very, very safe community.
And somewhat sheltered, man.
Yeah.
I had that conversation the other day where, coming out of COVID, we were kind of in this little sanctuary of sanity, not totally separate, but we didn't get what some other people got in other states. And sometimes that makes us a little apathetic.
Right.
Where we don't think we have to pay as close of attention because somebody's paying attention for us. Nobody's paying attention for you. You have to pay attention to yourself and make yourself an informed voter to keep this place. You have a responsibility.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the key.
That's my call to action.
We need to keep this place the way it is.
Yes.
And if we don't do anything, it ain't going to be that way.
Right. Love on your cops, love on your firefighters. Pay attention to who's running for election and ask why, right? Ask why they are running for election. Is it just kind of the ho-hum? Well, I just kind of happened to be here. Or is it because, hey, I can see the threats on the horizon, and here's what we're going to do to avoid it. Here's how we're going to retain the culture of our community. Here's how we're going to retain the relative safety of our community. I think those things are important, and we need to ask those.
Yeah.
If it's worth it living here, you got to protect it.
Yeah.
And just stay informed. I'm not telling you how to vote, and I know some names keep coming up, but this proof's in the pudding, right? And again, it is next to impossible for what's the word I'm looking for? An incumbent judge to get voted out. And sometimes I just think that they too need to know there's going to be some accountability, or at least some watchful eyes on what they're doing.
And that might be the thing, right? If you can't vote them out right away,
right?
Maybe them being aware that people are watching and we're noticing the decisions you're making.
Yeah. We've talked about this, man. How awesome would it be if somebody's sitting in the back with like a JW logo on a polo, and just what's up? Hey, I'm just going to go back and report the facts, man.
Yep.
Here you go. Get it right back to us. We just thought this decision was interesting.
I would think that would provide some value and hopefully make judges think deeply before they make a decision.
Right.
What's the best for what's the best decision for the best amount of people in my community
that voted me in?
That should be it.
What do they want?
Yeah.
Right? What by electing me, what were they asking for? It shouldn't be to have the most creative ruling in this group. I don't know.
No,
who knows what that is?
And I think there's a balance there. You can have sympathy for people that have committed crimes.
Yeah.
Some are just repeat offenders, and I think they're a lost cause, and you need to be able to recognize that too.
Right. Until there's enough skin in the game for them to change it. Look, man, I did in my role, as working on a drug task force and being really proactive, I still had sympathy for a lot of them and how they got there, especially learning their life story. And man, a lot of that was through conversation. But the ones that still reach out and say thank you to me were for taking them to jail. Because it was like, all right, here's my wake up. I've always said, man, Idaho, I still think relies on our old reputation of how strong our justice system was and how many, man, if people got an idea of what happens, with some of the light sentences coming down, that could be a challenge.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it get that way.
Right.
I think any local elections, man, that's my call to arms, I guess. Stay informed. Just don't sit back and let somebody else do it for you. Just know who you're voting for and know when the elections are coming up. We're going to do our best to get the information out there. I still call out kcgov.us. I should be able to find what judges are up for re-election. I should be able to find that. So should any other citizen. Mm-hmm. Because there are entities out there that are starting, including the Kootenai County Prosecutor's Office. They're posting sentencing, both favorable and unfavorable, which is great. So I think we should call out really good judges. I'll freely and openly admit that the people that I talk to on both sides, Destry Randalls and Maylee Walsh, very favorable return, even when it doesn't go their way, but they're fair and honest and consistent. Mm-hmm. Consistency is an underrated trait for everybody, in my opinion, but especially for a judge. Mm-hmm. I know we went down the freaking AI road with that one day, just because it would be interesting.
I honestly feel like it needs to go that way with today's society, which is crazy. It's crazy, but it seems like the only way that you could be fair and impartial.
Yeah, or you wouldn't be affected by mood or whether or not you've eaten or whether or not you had a fight before you came into work or just be in
the criminals attractive to you or whatever.
Right.
Who knows?
Or race, ethnic background. It would just be an analysis of the facts and then spit it out based on some percentage, then be recommended to a human to oversee, because I never would like the idea of AI making some sort of determination
and I know it's
seizing somebody's freedom.
It sounds crazy, but I'm going to keep talking about it.
I know. It is. We're going to get some hate. But like I said, there's my rant for the week. Obviously, it's been we put this one off for a little while. We intended to do this sooner, but
Eric got a cold and he had a sniffle.
Oh, stop it. Because I'm sick, but I'm good. All right?
I'm good.
I've worked a lot sicker than this, but
so
more Charlie Kirk.
Eric and I have been talking about this a lot. We're very busy in our day jobs. This is a passion project for us. We want to take it further, but time is a challenge. And so maybe there's somebody out there that has the background that wants to take this and run with it and allow us to be the conduit of the information, because we have the platform for that. So if you're out there and you're thinking and you want to help, please keep reaching out to us. We've had quite a few reach out to us so far, and we're trying to figure out how to organize this. We almost need someone, like I said, to take the reins and establish some type of system where we can have men and women in the courtrooms watching these cases.
Right.
Giving the information directly to us, and then we will present it out like that. I don't know if that's a reality. We can provide a lot of info through our connections here, but I think that would take it to the next level.
So do I. And I know there's a lot of people, and I would love to sit here and say I can take this passion project because I am truly passionate about it. There simply aren't enough hours in the day to do it. And it's not like reinventing. We have a lot of people with a lot of knowledge on how this is done in other cities. Mm-hmm. And there's even grants for it. I mean, there's some cool stuff out there where they have hundreds of volunteers that go and that way it's not one guy sitting in a courtroom for 50. No, thank you.
That'd be mind-numbing.
That'd be terrible. But when you go out and you get unbiased, unchecked, just raw data, that's what I want to disseminate out to the voting base.
Right. And like you said earlier, maybe just having people in courtrooms that are obviously part of a judicial watch group will be enough.
Oh, it'd be great.
It would be
I can tell you as a cop, I would love it.
Yes.
Watching the back, be like, yeah, all right, let's go. And then because they're in there watching videos too. Yeah. I always said the best thing for cops, especially Spokane County cops, was live PD. Live PD, because as much hell as they were getting raw, unvetted footage, and people are like, oh my God, that's Spokane.
Right.
And then weird, their city council's like, yeah, we can't have that. We can't have that out there. People are actually seeing what Spokane looks like. So, and I'm not trying to knock it, but the brothers and sisters in green are out there getting it. I mean, and it was one of the busiest ones. So I would love to get some unvetted, unbiased info out to the public. I'm all about that. And I know that there's a lot of people that have reached out about some particular incidents, and one judge in particular. And That is not lost on us, and we will.
Yep.
We just got to have our ducks in a row before we do.
Yeah, we never want to spread misinformation
Right.
or tarnish someone's name who does not deserve it. So we will be very, very careful with that.
But that's coming. That's
Yep.
not lost.
And we mentioned at the beginning, I will put it in the show notes as well. But if you want to reach out to us, whether anonymously or not, you can email us at info@nidexperience.com. Those go straight to me, no one else. So you can provide that information. If you want to remain anonymous, just put it at the top. We will never release anybody's name that you do not want us to release. That's just our promise.
No, and that's a secure channel to send some information our way, unless you explicitly say, "Hey, I'm totally good with you name dropping."
Sure.
We won't do that. Honestly, we say that in our other job too, but our reputations are worth a heck of a lot more than any transaction.
Absolutely.
So I damn sure wouldn't risk that for some likes and subscribes. So we'd rather have a good trusted network.
If you got pissed off with the information that Eric provided today, that's good. That means you have a good soul. Harness that in a positive way. Write letters, talk to people, reach out to Kootenai County.
Yeah, and converse, man. Just have, God, if we learned anything from what's happened in the last couple of weeks, open up lines of communication with neighbors. Just remind them to say, "Hey, look, no, we have a responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, this election's important. You need to go in and vote. Here's the information. Here's why, don't tell them how to vote, but say I have some concerns about some rulings and sentencing, and then get out there and take an active role in keeping the community the way that it is."
Yeah.
Ask.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric, for pissing me off.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's a great motivator. Yeah. Any other last notes? You hit them all?
Yeah, I am going to get into that other one on the next one. I know there's a lot of people asking questions about us doing that. I'm working on it. I don't have enough to drop that hammer just yet.
Well, that's a teaser.
Sorry.
That's a crazy teaser. No, that's good. That keeps them coming back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, stay tuned for the third episode where we will get into some pretty spicy information that'll fire you guys up.
Yeah, please keep sending any information that you have, or tips, or things that you guys would like to see on here.
Yeah, that would be helpful to us. And cool. Well, thank you, Eric.
Yep. Later, guys.
Later.